Sometimes, in order to find a perfect beer and food pairing, all you have to do is consider geography and look at where the beer was brewed. Let's take Allagash White, for example. It's perhaps the most iconic beer brewed in Portland, Maine. Portland also happens to be the world capital for lobster. So I don't think it's a coincidence that lobster found its perfect companion in Belgian-style wit beer. And that makes a lot of sense. Something as delicately flavored as lobster, you wouldn't want to pair it with something bold and robust like a stout because it'll just overpower the flavors of the lobster. You need some brighter flavors like citrus and spice. And also, if you're eating lobster, let's face it, it's probably going to be accompanied with a lot of fat, probably butter. And you're going to need something dry and effervescent to cut through that flavor. Belgian wit beer seems to fit the bill just perfectly. So I'm not going to think too far out of the box on this one. I'm going to stick with the beer pairing greatest hits, and I'm going to make a lobster roll to pair with Allagash White on this episode of Bake and a Brew. As with any lobster recipe, we're going to start with exactly how we want to dispose of the lobster. And in my experience, the most humane way is to just cut until after it's already dead. It's kind of weird that you wanted to watch that. Anyway, this lobster is only about a pound, which should steam in about 8 minutes. After which the lobster shell picks up that beautiful orange color. As I remove the lobster from the steamer, I'm going to place it directly into an ice bath to stop the cooking process. I can't say I have too much experience dissecting a lobster, but I'll give this my best shot. I'll start by twisting off its tail and removing each of its claws. For the tail, I'll give it a squeeze all the way around, just to loosen the meat from the shell. And then take a pair of kitchen shears and cut down the underside of a shell. Open that up, and I should be able to pull out the tail in one solid piece. For the claws, I'll remove a knuckle and come back to that later. And remove the smaller part of its pincers. Then I'm going to take the back of my knife and try to crack open the back of its claw. No need to dull your blade for this. Flip it over and do it to the same on the other side, giving it a little twisting motion to try to crack it open. And I should be able to move the claw in one solid piece. And I'll repeat with the other claw. And again, try to get that clean break. For the knuckles, I'll take my kitchen shears again and just cut along the outside of the shell so I could get that meat out in one piece. Now this lobster was tiny, but I didn't think it was this tiny, so I had to go back to the store to supplement it with a little more lobster tail. And this is such a small amount that I'm not even going to follow a specific recipe. I'm just going to try to eyeball it here. Let's get in a little tablespoon of mayonnaise. I don't want it drenched in mayonnaise, just enough to coat everything. Do a small stalk of celery just for texture and chop it up really fine. Tarragon goes great with lobster, so let's get a little bit of that in there. A little bit of salt, some black pepper. And I certainly don't want this to be spicy, but I'll just put a couple drops of Cholula in there to wake it up a little bit. I'll give that a mix and a taste to see where it's at. And I think we could do something a little more interesting. And I think I have just the idea, and it's right there on the label of Allagash White. We'll zest a little orange in there. And toast up some coriander seed. Toasting it really helps wake up the flavors. Grind that fine and put that on the lobster salad and give it a mix to combine. And there you have it, lobster salad ready for the bun. Now at this point you're probably wondering, isn't this channel called Bake and a Brew? Where's the bacon part? Well, believe me, we're not using store-bought buns for this. So I'm going to start with 450 grams of bread flour. and 3 tablespoons of dough conditioner. Okay, I could feel you glaring at me through the screen. Yes, I am putting additives into my bread dough, but just give me a chance to explain. If you look up other lobster roll recipes, the huge majority of them would say to serve on store-bought hot dog buns. And I admit there's something appealing about those store-bought buns because they're always exceptionally soft. And that's something I've had trouble achieving at home until I started to use dough conditioner. Now, some may criticize it because the companies that package dough conditioner are often vague about its contents, but it just means anything that improves the quality of the dough. Things like ascorbic acid, which sounds like a dangerous chemical, it's just another word for vitamin C, and no one's complaining about the health effects of that. But when you put it in dough, it gives you that soft texture that I'm looking for. And if you consider that cheating, remember the alternative is to go into the store and buy a bag of rolls anyway. So with this, I'm kind of getting the best of both worlds. I'm getting the soft texture, but I'm also getting the flavor of home-baked bread. Now, where was I? A teaspoon of salt, 30 grams of sugar, 2 tablespoons of yeast, and we'll move that to the mixer with the dough attachment, where we're going to add 100 milliliters of milk along with 100 milliliters of water, 1 beaten egg, and we'll add 3 tablespoons of butter, just 1 pat at a time. Continue to mix it for about 10 minutes until the gluten forms and it passes the window pane test. And I'm going to knead it by hand for a little bit just to tighten up the outside and get it into a nice ball. I'll put it in a grease bowl and covered, put aside to rise for about 90 minutes. I'll punch the dough down to distribute all the gas. And let's portion this out into our individual rolls. I'm looking for about 100 grams to 120 grams per roll. I want mine on the larger side, so I'm gonna make 7 rolls out of this. And doing the quick math, that works out to about 114 grams per roll. So let's do this one by one and see where we're at. Try to get them as even as we could. If they're off by a couple grams, that's perfectly fine. I'll flatten these out and then fold over the ends until I could form it into a ball. And then roll it by hand to tighten up the outside. This is the pre-shaping part of it. I'm going to do that for every single one of them before covering with a damp towel. And after 20 minutes and the gluten had time to relax, we're going to do this final shaping. I'll flatten out again, roll over one of the sides, flip it around, roll over the other side. I'm going to tuck the ends a little bit too, just so it looks a little nicer. And I'm going to squeeze the seam closed. We'll then roll it so it gets in a neat torpedo shape. And place that into a baking tray. And I'll repeat for the other 6. I'm placing in a tray till they're just about touching. It's actually important that they're touching as they rise for a couple reasons. First of all, we want them to rise upwards and not outwards, but there's an even more important reason that'll give us that signature New England roll look. And after letting it rise for 30 minutes, we'll brush on an egg wash and into a 375 oven for about 20 minutes. And as they come out, they should have that beautiful golden top. And while they're still warm, I'm going to brush them in butter. This will help soften the crust and, of course, introduce some more buttery flavor. These buns should pull apart nicely. And I hate when people squeeze food on YouTube, but this is just too soft to resist. Now the signature of the New England style bun is the top split, so I'll cut it down the side. And those bare sides I'm going to brush with butter, and then this is the really neat part. We're going to toast it to give what I could only describe as that grilled cheese flavor. It's that wonderful combination of toast and that nutty brown butter flavor. Toast it on one side, give it a flip over, get that other side nice and golden brown. And I'll open this up and stuff it with the lobster. Now obviously if you're following along, this is sort of unproportional. I made 7 rolls and I'm going to stuff the whole thing into one, but I'm looking for that perfect lobster roll. And there you have it. Delicate lobster with the quintessential Belgian wit beer spices and a buttery New England style top split bun. Allagash White and the Belgian wit beer style in general was one of the first style of beers that attracted me when I started drinking craft beer. It's so approachable that bright flavors of orange peel and coriander, I think, attract a wide spectrum of people, whether they're beer drinkers or not. But what's funny about that is now, after spending over 2 decades in the brewing industry, this is still one of my favorite beers. Now, Allagash didn't invent this style of beer. It was a Belgian brewer by the name of Pierre Celis resurrected this very old style, actually, and named his beer after his old hometown of Hoegaarden. And then he ended up moving to Austin, Texas to open up the Celis Brewery. But this particular one from Allagash, I think, is one of the best ones out there. I think it has a stronger spice profile. Like, I get more of the coriander in the Allagash version than a lot of the other ones on the market. And those are the kind of flavors that really work with lobster. Lobster is so delicate that you can't overpower it, but the light spice and citrusy flavors seem to go well. And that's why I think lighter styles of Belgian ales go perfectly with it. And I think it's just by coincidence that 2 of the iconic foods from New England are Allagash White and the Lobster Roll, but it works perfectly together. Not only do the spices of the beer work so well with the lobster, but the effervescence and the light body of the beer really helps cut through the butteriness of the roll. The brewing industry too often focuses on finding bigger, bolder flavors. But I think when you're trying to find something to pair with something as delicate as lobster, then you don't want something to overpower it. You need those bright citrusy flavors and the light spice aroma to complement the lobster. Allagash White is so much more than a light beer citrusy flavor, too. There's so much mouthfeel to it, too, because this style of beer often uses unmalted wheat or flaked oats, and something to give it kind of a creamy mouthfeel in addition to that bright citrusy flavor. I think the real unsung hero here is the bun. After looking up lobster rolls, I've seen so many sources that say it's served on a hot dog bun. But it's so much more than that. The top split bun with the sides bare so you could grill the sides of it and get that nice toasted buttery flavor just adds so much to the sandwich. And also, you're spending all this money on lobster and putting in all that effort to try to get every ounce of meat out of the lobster, and then you're just going to put it on a store-bought bun? Why not put forth the extra effort to have some fresh bread to serve it on? The orange peel and the coriander seed is something that I haven't seen in any other lobster roll recipe, but it really works in there. And there's no better way to tie the beer and the food together than to literally use common ingredients. And every once in a while, I get a strong taste of tarragon as well. It's that star anise-like flavor that complements shellfish really well. This is without a doubt the most money I've spent and the most time and effort I've spent putting something in a hot dog bun. But it's not like putting gold leaf on something where you're just trying to make it appear valuable. There is a lot of value in this. These are flavors and textures that I can't get anywhere else but from that fresh lobster. Now, clearly, I'm not from New England, so this was really a special treat for me. But you saw what I had to go through to find the lobster, and it was only a little pound lobster, and I had to spend a lot of money for that. So I don't think this is something I could run out and just have any night of the week. This is something special that I have to have when it's available, and think it might be worth a trip to Maine just to enjoy the real thing. And I'm really curious if there's any New Englanders watching this. Like, let me know how this looks. How did I do on this? Because for me, this tastes amazing. Thank you for watching. And join me next time when I take another one of my favorite classic beers and try to bake the perfect pairing.